Something to say. So, first of all, thank you so much for being here today. It's such a joy and a privilege to see you all as we conclude our month of services on the theme of belonging. I'm also delighted to be able to share that small but powerful portion of Dr. King's I've Been to the Mountaintop speech, and I'll have more to say about that a little later on. A portion, an excerpt that is all about belonging, I think. So let me just begin by reminding you that today is the first day of Rosh Hashanah, and I want to just offer a Happy New Year to all of our Jewish friends and neighbors, and this is the beginning of the High Holy Days, a period that will, of course, culminate in Yom Kippur. I also want to just reiterate a couple of the points that Debbie made during the announcements. I do hope, and I'm excited to see any of you who would like to stop by the Newcomer Circle at 12:15, which will be out under the pergola by the playground. If you're fairly new to us, or if you haven't been here in a while and just want to come for a chat and talk a little bit about UU, I would love for you to join us. And Kate Soderman and I, there's Kate sitting over there, we'll be out there at 12:15, and we'll only keep you for half an hour. So it's a very, very short commitment of time. And I also want to mention as well the great time that I had last Sunday afternoon at the Charlottesville Pride Festival. I was very moved and inspired by all the volunteers from our congregation who turned out to express their love and solidarity with the queer and trans communities. I met a number of wonderful people who stopped by our UUCville table and had fun sharing some of our good news. I was also pleased to see a few other progressive religious communities at Pride, although I'm sorry to say that for every faith community that welcomes queer and trans people and turns out at an event like Charlottesville Pride, the vast majority of religious communities are not so welcoming and do not represent themselves at events like that. The exclusion and marginalization that is still found in most religious traditions and communities extends well beyond organized religion. Think for a moment about the many ways humankind is divided into the privileged and the marginalized, rich and poor, the powerful and the powerless, saved and condemned, friend and enemy. As optimistic and hopeful as I try to be, it cannot be denied that love, justice, and peace have been, and I'm sorry to say still are, the exception rather than the rule. And I'm also sorry to point out that our world doesn't show much sign of moving in a more just and peaceful direction. Think about it for a moment. African Americans, and especially unarmed black men, continue to be killed and brutalized by police violence. The reproductive rights of women are in serious jeopardy and in some cases have already been eliminated. Discrimination against the queer community is rising, and the lives of transgender children and youth are being put in harm's way right here in Virginia. Migrants are being scapegoated by hateful politicians and treated as political pawns. Low-income families are facing a rising tide of evictions and food insecurity. Our democratic institutions are under assault by forces rooted in racism, white supremacy, and violence. And the climate is getting hotter and hotter on a daily basis. Okay, now that I've got you in a good mood and got you feeling hopeful and optimistic about the future, let me just say that I think, and this is my opinion, and it's an oversimplification, but I have to say that I think the root of all of these many problems, ranging from the exclusion that we see in so many religious communities to the political extremists who openly embrace hate and violence, I think the root of all these problems is the simple fact that for most of human history, we as a species have been unwilling and unable to put the idea that all people are the children of God, that all people have dignity and worth, and that all people are precious and deserving of love and compassion. We have been unable and unwilling to put that idea and that value at the center of our lives and in the driver's seat of human history. To put it another way, the human family has really never truly lived as if we are one family in which each and every person is cherished, respected, and treated like they belong. And I must say that while it would take far too long to explore why humankind has failed to put love and compassion at the center of history, I feel as a pastor, as a minister, that religion shoulders a good bit of the blame. More often than not, religion divides, judges, and excludes, rather than celebrating and affirming the beauty and blessedness of all. And in doing so, religion makes itself an ally and offers moral cover for the very worst in human nature and human institutions, rather than challenging an unjust status quo and calling humankind back to our best selves, our compassionate selves, our justice-seeking selves, our loving selves, calling us back to who we are and who we ought to be is, in my view, what religion at its best is supposed to do. That's what religion is supposed to do. And that brings me back to Dr. King's retelling of the parable of the Good Samaritan. As I said before, I have come back to this portion of his speech over and over again because it captures in a compelling and inspiring way how we are supposed to live and journey together. As Dr. King makes clear, human beings are called to be other-centered rather than just self-centered. We are called to be compassionate rather than indifferent. And we are called to express love and care for our neighbors rather than hating them or remaining silent in the face of their suffering. That is the essence of what it means to reverse the question. Rather than asking what will happen to me if I help someone get involved or take a risk for justice, we are called to be concerned about the welfare of our neighbors by asking what will happen to them if we don't stop to help. Don't take action against a system that perpetuates racism or that puts trans kids at risk. And don't stop to offer the shelter of love and belonging. Oh, there it is. I thought I lost my water for a minute. And you know, there's something else that I especially appreciate about Dr. King's message. Near the beginning of the parable, after the two religious officials ignore the man who has been robbed and thrown in a ditch, Dr. King points out that a Samaritan, a person he says is of another race, stops to help the man in need. For those who may not be familiar with the history of the land of Israel, Samaritans were outsiders, reviled and rejected by society. And yet, in the story, the Good Samaritan ignores the boundaries that he is not supposed to cross in order to help a person in need, a person who more than likely was part of the community that reviled and rejected him. And the reason Dr. King took time to point out the boundary-crossing compassion of the Good Samaritan was to reinforce Jesus' radical answer to a question that preceded his telling of the parable. After being asked what one had to do to attain eternal life, Jesus repeated something he said often, what is sometimes called the Great Commandment. Jesus said, well, you have to love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. But then this person asked Jesus a follow-up question, a question that I think is the most important question in all of religious life, and a question that I think is at the heart of Unitarian Universalism. And the question was simply this: but Rabbi, who is my neighbor? And in responding with the parable of the Good Samaritan, Jesus is telling us, and Dr. King is reiterating, that our neighbor is everybody, everyone, every person in the human family. Our neighbors are not simply our friends or those with whom we agree. Our neighbors are not just fellow Unitarian Universalists or people who share our religion or our beliefs. Our neighbors are not just those who live in our communities, in our state, in our country. They're not people necessarily with whom we share a common culture, history, or language. Our neighbors are not those who share our skin tone, our gender identification, or our sexual orientation. Friends, the message at the heart of Jesus' parable and of Dr. King's interpretation is that we are required to reverse the question with everyone, with all people. Every person is my neighbor. Everyone is my concern. Everyone is deserving of my love, my respect, and my compassion. Now, I say Dr. King's message and the question he answers is at the heart of Unitarian Universalism simply because our tradition, at its best, has affirmed an ethic of reversing the question since I think it was founded over 500 years ago. Our core values and principles are rooted in our belief in the underlying unity and connectedness of humankind and the web of life, and in the transforming power of love, a love that is universal, boundless, and unconditional. Those were the core theological assumptions guiding our Unitarian and Universalist forebears, and although our theological language has evolved, we affirm those values: the dignity and worth of all people. We affirm justice, equity, and compassion in all human relations. And we affirm the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Now, I'm the first to acknowledge that our principles, ideals, and good intentions have not always been matched by our actions. And we Unitarian Universalists have a long way to go in living into the fullness of our faith. We have not done enough justice. We have not loved our neighbor sufficiently. And we have not reached far enough beyond the safety of our congregations to, in Dr. King's words from another famous speech, tear down gigantic mountains of evil. Now, while we haven't done enough and have a great deal of work ahead of us, I don't want to leave you with a downer. We Unitarian Universalists have done a lot of good and made a positive difference. Think about the Unitarian and Universalists who took courageous stands against slavery, on behalf of women's suffrage, and against the death penalty. Think about Martha and Waitstill Sharp, two Unitarians who answered a call to help refugees escape Nazi tyranny and genocide. And think about the UUs who marched alongside Dr. King in Selma, who protested against the Vietnam War and the nuclear arms race, and who are proclaiming loudly and boldly that Black lives matter. And while I'm at it, I want to say a word about the courageous actions taken recently by this congregation, by all of you, actions for which you should be proud and which speak so well of the journey you are making. You know, when I was applying to be your developmental minister and learning more about you, I read about the decision you had made while you were on Zoom and during the height of COVID to change your name from the Thomas Jefferson Memorial Church to the UU Congregation of Charlottesville. I imagine that decision was not easy and led to some feelings of loss. but I think changing your name says something powerful about how you are choosing to live Unitarian Universalism. I am so proud of you for making that choice, and I feel you have set our congregation on a path to live into the fullness of Unitarian Universalist values and principles. Well done, UU congregation of Charlottesville. Well done. So let me simply conclude by saying that I believe we are poised for great things in this congregation and that our future is very, very bright. Through your words and your deeds, the UU congregation of Charlottesville is opening the doors of this sanctuary wider and wider, and you are reversing the question every time you offer your love and compassion to those who are hurting. Every time you act to dismantle racism and white supremacy, and every time you widen the circle of love and belonging. Friends, as we make this journey together, I can't wait to see how we will build on the good work you are already doing. Just imagine the justice we can help create, the love we can share, and the souls we can welcome into this beloved community. Together, we can help build a better world and help our community and this world become a place filled with freedom, justice, and a whole lot of singing. Thank you, friends, so very much for listening, and blessed be.